Yeah, was good. I'm interested in this Vice documentary about ghost guns, which, if you guys don't understand, is essentially just a unmarked, unserial coded gun that is very accessible in the United States. This is a process in which I'm pretty familiar with, and as 3D printing gets more accessible to the common man, I think could pertain to be more of a problem than we realize. That's just insane. Like that is the most unnecessary shit, bro. I need a Chinese dragon mouth
This
to
is
throw
just
on this.
a way of expressing ourselves. It's
Yeah.
freedom of expression in a much.
The problem is it's cool, right? Like there's so many different ways to customize that shit, and there's no backsides in the U.S. I'm just like picturing like Mark Rober behind that thing. That's Mark Rober basically.
You know, it is on par or stronger than the actual factory one.
So the 3D printed is better than what you can buy
For
this.
this one, I would say, yeah.
It's a brave new world.
For real, yeah. That's terrifying, because again, like, at least weapons manufacturers, granted, not many, but they have some regulations that they have to follow that, like, you could just skirt the fuck around with 3D printing.
The first 3D printed gun created by Cody Wilson in 2013. Printing technology has come a long way since then.
Yeah.
And so have the guns. Sometimes made
This
entirely
dude's playing Call of Duty, bro. There is no
Long way since then.
need
And so have
at
the
all
gun.
for a purple stock and a gold-bodied gun. Like, what? Just got a radar scope. Like, what? There's no real use for that thing other than to show people it. And I guess apparently the fact that it's stronger than regular guns.
They're technically ghost guns, untraceable
Right.
firearms with no serial numbers. Only 10 states and Washington, D.C. have laws on ghost guns. And they're
Right, yeah, I only know about it because I live in New Jersey. So, realistically speaking, the whole fucking middle of the country there, you're just allowed to do this. Or in New Jersey, you can't get one with, like, a medical marijuana card, for instance, but, like, these are just the states that regulate them, right? Not just, like, disavow them, just regulate them, right? Everybody else is unregulated right now. He's doing this in Florida, I'd imagine, which is also, like, to me, like, the breeding ground for shit like this.
the most common ghost guns come partially finished with all the necessary parts in a box.
Right.
These ghost guns are
It's literally, you can assemble it in your basement. It takes like an afternoon. It's like, I mean, if you could build a computer, you can build the fuck out of this easy. But realistically, you don't even need to know how to build a computer to do this. It's really just like putting together a puzzle or like putting together a chair. You know, it's like something a lot of people can very easily do. And you really just buy the kits, like he said. It's like so
they're all
fucking
too
easy.
familiar for police in Philadelphia.
They're called ghost guns.
With gun violence on the rise in some U.S. cities, the Biden administration is cracking down, and the president is taking aim
I haven't
at
heard
ghost
much
gun
about
kits
this
in particular.
since April 7th, probably when he said this.
Want to rein in the proliferation of so-called ghost gun. Can buy this kit as little as
A
30
16-year-old could buy that kit, put together a gun, and show up to a middle school, bro. That's not
minutes,
good.
put together a weapon.
Especially when you're printing Hello Kitty on it.
Together a weapon.
Like, you're telling me this isn't appealing to, like, children? Or this is a Call of Duty gun, you know what I mean?
A nerdy group of inventors and designers who just love to build and tinker with 3D printed guns.
They just love to tinker with things that kill people.
Florida, which is hosting the first ever shooting competition exclusively for ghost guns.
I honestly am surprised those things don't just explode in your fucking face, to be honest.
I think my hammer broke.
Right.
To see what today's 3D printed guns are capable of, I decided to enter the contest. But first, I needed a
You gotta
ghost
make
gun.
one. Yeah.
She's 5. She's like, what kind of stuff does it make? I'm like, well, it can make all kinds of stuff. It can make toys. She's like, can it make a cat? It can make a cat. So the first, very first thing I printed was a cat for her. And then second thing I printed was a gun for me.
What a laundry list. Hey, man. All right. First thing we need is a cat toy for my daughter. After, let's get me a gun. That's what I'm saying. It's like, if you have a 3D printer, that's it. Like, I mean, it's wraps. It's
It's an
expensive.
XCOM.
Like, the pay gate for 3D printing is like, this is something only rich people can do right now anyway. So it's just people with too much money trying to figure out what to do with it. So they're going to 3D print weaponry that they could display in their home because they're a gun nut, right? When you spend all of your money on real guns, you run out of stuff to do. When you're done collecting all the real stuff, you want to move on to the fucking fake shit, right? It's like hold on. It's like this shit, right? I'm a fucking nerd, right? But like these dudes are like weebs for guns.
who now teaches classes on self-defense and firearms safety.
Rob
He helped
Pincus.
organize the shooting
Why do I
contest.
feel like I've
He
heard that
agreed to help us
name?
Ghost gun started out sort of as an internal conversation in the gun community. Like, well, that gun, there's no record of it existing, right? So when you make your own gun, in this case 3D printing, you're making a gun that no one else knows exists if you don't want them to, right?
So for our
Right, that term isn't exclusive to 3D printed weaponry, but it is a term used to describe untraceable weaponry. For instance, the gun that killed Shinzo Abe in Japan was a ghost gun. Japan has incredibly strict gun laws. The only way that you could get someone like Shinzo Abe assassinated in that country is not by like having a Lee Harvey Oswald or someone to kill you at your play. You have to tape together a shotgun in your basement and scrounge your way up to like a balcony and get lucky. That's a country with much stricter gun restrictions, right? So whereas here you get to make it in your basement.
purpose is here today because we're 3D printing this gun frame and it doesn't have a serial number on it. If the ATF wanted to try to figure out where this gun came from, if I didn't tell them, they would have no way to know.
Absolutely, right.
And that is totally legal.
Right.
There's so much that you don't have to do in the United States to get a gun that other countries have to do. For instance, just like background checks. Like for instance, in New Zealand, you have to have 2 people that vouch for you. You got to go through a certain level of training with weaponry. You got to go through a lot of barriers before you ultimately get your license in the mail after like a 6-month to a year period of time. Whereas in the United States, it is just as simple as one background check. Or it's just as simple as let me print it in my basement. You know, this is finding a way around the background check. You know, which is unfortunate again because there are 16-year-old white boys who find their ways with guns and into middle schools that ultimately create a lot of problems. All the 60-year-old white cops that don't want to solve that problem while it's happening and instead want to check their phones like they're nervous at a party exacerbate a problem that already exists in this country, especially with the fact that these are unregulated in like 40 plus states.
I'm thinking this should be 16 hours. That's my
Longer
guess.
than it would take to go to the store and buy it.
You have to want to do it this way. I don't know who the person is that falls into the weird zone where they're not just they don't want to buy a gun. They can't buy a gun, but they really want a gun.
And he's right? Like right now, it makes more sense to just buy a gun unless you have a bad background, right? In which case, a 3D printer, you don't need a background check to buy. That's the person who it caters to right now. The person that it caters to in the next 10 years, when we all have, 20 years ago, we were all running on like Windows Vista. You know, now that we all have relatively high-tech technology available at home, the threshold for what people are able to output from home has increased. As stuff like that kind of technology, like 3D printing, gets more available, then we're just going to have more and more people with 3D printed items, and it's going to become more and more mainstay. The level of buying into 3D printing won't be as expensive. You don't have to buy the material. You can go to a place to use, I guess you couldn't go to a place and print a gun, but you know what I mean. Like, I guess in a place that it's unregulated, they can't stop you. To me, you can't ignore that fact that it's just like, it's a way to get a gun without a background check.
As opposed to finding somebody to buy a gun for them or buying a gun illegally.
Because like gun shows have existed to do that forever. Yeah, 3D printers are crazy, man.
A group called Are We Cool Yet has been pushing the envelope recently with 3D printed guns.
You're not cool yet.
Protected by the right to bear arms, but also the First Amendment and the right to freedom of expression, because their guns are works of art.
That dude violated the fuck out of him with this.
Their guns are works of art.
He fucking violated him right there, the guy who wrote this shit. Yes, it is artistic, and at the end of the day, they are protected under laws, but those laws probably should exist to not allow just mass distribution of ways to print weapons, you know? Melt me down if you can. Sorry, I'm like reading the text on the guns. It's just so interesting. It's just like trying to be like, kind of like a cool boys club, which is like kind of all guns have been. Turns it up a notch because it's so customizable and you don't have to follow certain manufacturing needs. And you just also have to be rich to begin with. Like, I haven't seen these are all white dudes to my knowledge.
Actually,
So.
Why did you want to be hidden in the first place?
Just because of the political situation out there right now. There's a lot of members from states where this stuff is in the gray, not necessarily illegal, but it's frowned upon, and they
I ain't even really against guns, right? Like, I just am a fan of the legal process of doing such, and I think this lives in a gray area because nobody knows how long it's going to last for, and whether or not you're going to have to end up registering those things, and whether or not they have to test them to see if maybe you're doing something differently that you shouldn't be with a gun.
like there would be reprisals against them at work or at school or wherever they tend to.
School? What? My man said at work or at school. Don't bring this shit to a fucking school, my guy. What?
Reside.
I like can't believe he said that. To say that they're gonna revolt against you if they find out that you have an unregistered gun, and like, are you bringing it to the school? Are you bringing it to the job? Like, are you carrying it around? Like, that's the problem, is when it stops being used for home defense and it starts being carried around because it's cool. And unfortunately, when you put a lion head on it or a Hello Kitty emote or spray paint it gold and purple, you're going to want to show it off more than just a regular gun.
Them at work or at school or wherever they tend to reside.
How did you get into the 3D printed gun community?
Oh man, so I've always loved firearms. I love building them. Honestly, I'll say I like building them more than I like shooting them, just because I like putting things together. And 3D printing was just the next.
It's like
step.
it makes guns more of a hobby. It's just because again, like, you have to buy all the attachments, you go to the shooting range, you buy the bullets, and again, like, that's if you're doing it the right way. It's an expensive hobby. This just like turns it all the way up and like makes it a more expensive but unique hobby.
So this is based off of the Scorpion, which is a CZ Evo design.
With the
this
white
one is
claw in
obviously
it is
extremely
insane.
modified.
Talk about this. You use the word
How is it
art
not
to
hitting the
describe
teeth?
this. People see this and see a weapon. You see art. What's the distinction?
I mean, art's in the eye of the beholder, right?
Sure. It's about how you use art, right? Because art isn't used as a weapon usually. It doesn't have a second-hand capability to literally murder. If I draw a painting, I can't kill you with it like you can with that. You're right. If it was just a wall piece, I think it's fine. And if you just take it off to go to the shooting range, that's fine. Or like if you're using it in a home defense situation, I think even that to some degree is understandable. Beyond that, it's like, brother, I don't know. I don't know what you're trying to pretend.
Most art can't be used to kill people if you wanted to.
Thank you.
Yes, it could be used for harm, but
All art
I feel
except
like
for this.
most people that are going to do that are going to go out and steal one, or the amount of effort that you put into these, you're not going to do that just to
That's fair. Again, it
Don't-
takes a day to 3D print it, but if you have a 3D printer or you're like a fringe kid who like has the 16 hours to wait but can't pass a background check or are underage, then you will go through that effort. Or if I don't know, if anybody who can't legally buy a gun will go through with that effort. If you can legally buy a gun and you've bought every gun that you legally can and you really are into building guns and now you want to 3D print it, that's probably the core demographic. But again, unfortunately, there's going to be outliers that use this type of technology in order to literally take lives, and it's because they can't pass background checks and do it the right way.
While I sat with Xander, the ghost gun was busy printing. After 18
That's
hours,
crazy.
it was almost finished.
It looks like a fucking block of ice. Like, I could hardly tell what it is.
18 hours of printing later, and we have what looks more or less like the frame of a gun.
There's a frame of a firearm inside of there with the supports, and of course on that raft we did for adhesion. But yeah, I mean, it looks like a clean print. It even has your text on the side.
In order to turn
It
a
says
3D
ghost
printed
gun.
piece, $320 worth of parts that we ordered off of the internet, delivered here to assemble this
not
into
a lot
a
of
gun.
money.
I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea what I'm doing here.
Perfect.
There's people who are legally barred from getting a firearm, like a convicted felon, for example,
So,
could make
but-
this themselves.
But do you not believe in one paying their debt, reforming, going through the
Well,
process,
that's a different
getting their
question.
votes
A
back?
different question is whether or not that law is just.
The solution.
Yeah, it doesn't change the fact that that felon is still able to skirt around the law, and the law shouldn't outcast that felon, but under the same breath, like, some people shouldn't have guns that aren't allowed to have guns.
It's so easy to get a gun, anyone can do it, and that's causing high rates of gun violence. And the troubling thing for a lot of people about what we're seeing here is this is sort of like the last frontier of
Right.
no matter what the government will try to do to regulate gun sales, now someone can just buy a printer and a roll of plastic.
Okay, you think guns should be harder to get. Does that mean you want to start regulating rolls of plastic and 3D printers?
That's the slippery slope that we've gotten to of like, how do you, even if the government wants.
You don't regulate the printers and the roll of spool. You regulate the ability to download the fucking templates, brother. You make them only available on government websites. You make people pay for the templates, or only available through like the same way that you can buy a firearm.
If the government wanted to stop this, could they? And I think the answer is pretty clearly no.
No.
Right.
With strength. Yes. Now check the fit, like see if the slide
Fucking
slides.
Ben Shabibo over
Yeah,
here trying to
whack.
fucking use tools.
Right now, the moment of truth. Does it go on to the frame?
Moment of truth.
Boom.
That's it, man.
Sir.
We just made a ghost gun. We're roughly 4.5 hours from picking up the plastic off the printer and assembling all of the bits.
Is this the easy path to guns?
It is not easy. This is quite a process.
Right.
that without your expertise.
You need someone who knows what the fuck they're doing in order to do this, or a very thorough explanation and template of instructions. As well as, that's not to say that anybody can buy these parts and they're not incredibly easy to get in states that there are certain regulations, but in the states that things are completely unregulated, it is for sure easier if you can't go through the legal process. So it's, again, it's a way to arm yourself when you cannot. Or it just makes it, again, something cool to show off that makes people carry around guns more, which isn't necessarily a great thing in a world that has increasing gun violence.
Like my mom is like, this gun's not just gonna blow apart in your hands. That's very low probability.
Honestly, the most likely thing that's going to happen is the gun's just not going to function smoothly.
Right.
Okay.
Well, because it's not like you're throwing fucking gunpowder into the thing.
Is this gonna be okay?
It's literally just a bunch of like metal and shit. I joked earlier when I said that, but it's just like, it's very clearly just like a couple of pieces of metal and then the bullets, which are, I guess, the part that's dangerous.
I wouldn't be here if I didn't think it was going to be okay.
All right, let's do it then.
And you hit the target.
All
So
right.
there you go. First shot, successful. Are we fist bumping or are we high fiving? I'm not sure. I almost
Yeah.
feel like we should hug, but I don't know if we're far enough away from Corona.
Almost
jamming
is
every
filmed.
time.
Yep. So we're going to go back. We're going to work on it a little bit more.
Back to the filing.
You love the filing, man.
And that's the thing, is like the process kind of makes it like more endearing. So it's like people are going like, you really think people would do this rather than just buy a gun? And yeah, it's easier to buy a gun. Number one, if you can't legally do it, then it's one thing. But then you guys are also hyping up about how it's fucking fun, and it's like an afternoon. It's like a 2-day thing, you know? It's just like a little task. It's a hobby, you know? You get to print out all different kinds of stuff. You get to be creative. You get to put all different kinds of things on them. You get to try them out. You get to fix them, you know? It's not like an unuseful skill to learn, but again, unfortunately, it's about asking whether or not they could be used for the wrong things.
There you go. It worked. And it locked open, and you hit the target. All right, now you have 2 shots in a row. Now you have an operational semi-automatic gun.
It got real.
You don't look convinced. but this is part of the process, right? Your ghost gun is
Yeah.
kind of ready.
Kinda ready.
Yep. We just need to get you, we'll get you some more practice tomorrow before the match.
Right, yeah. Now you just gotta use it.
To the first Gunmakers match. This event is definitely a adventure. It's going to be competition in there somewhere. It's going to be a lot of show and tell. It's going to be a lot of like
This dude's
friendliness,
shirt,
happiness, and
not
all
this
that.
dude.
Meet the guys from Aussie, which is pronounced 17.
I don't even want to say it because I feel like it could be fucking soundbited the wrong way, but that dude's shirt is on another level.
Are we cool yet? These guys have worked incredibly hard to make sure that this was going to happen.
This
But this
fucking-
is yet. These guys have worked.
This brother right here and this brother right there are exactly the type of demographic I'm expecting here.
All right, gun making, and that's what it is. And for
And again, I think that's fine under regulation, but there needs to be a board of people who essentially, like, you can't just go on Reddit and download these templates, man. That's the problem. I'm curious what quantifies the best gun. Or I guess that they're just going with the individual, like ability to hit stuff.
You make it look so easy.
Well, it is.
I'm a little nervous, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I fired
That's
about
what I'm
5
saying,
bullets
man.
total so far out of this gun.
He was at least honest about it. Homie camoed up, was like, yeah, bro, this is fucking way easy.
Oh, we jammed. Reliability is a problem with this weapon. So my gun kept jamming. This was our issue when we were test firing a couple days ago after the gun was ready, but it wouldn't properly eject the bullet and load another.
You do still get the first fucking shot off, and you still have been able to like crank it together. That's like you're still able to kill people. I guess the narrative he's going with is like, oh well, it's not so easy, and it's true. But all these people have very functioning weapons because they've been doing it forever. You tried to do it in 2 days. If you're trying to prove the point that you can kill people in just 2 days worth of effort, if you have a 3D printer and a spool of wire, the answer was yes. But can you be efficient and kill a bajillion people? No, not unless you have the skill that all these people have obtained from learning and doing it. What you found out is that you're a novice at building guns.
3D gun makers struggle with reliability.
Well, because look at what they're
Rob,
making.
as a-
You made a Glock 9. I think if they all had to make a Glock 19, bro, it'd be raps. You're good. They're good. But they're building like a fucking Call of Duty weapon, brother. Like they got a loadout out there.
Poor 3D gun makers.
You know what I
struggle
mean? Like that's not the same scale as what you did.
Use the ghost gun frame with a different top end.
He's getting that slide.
Hey, Barrett, grab me a little thing of oil.
So Rob is very kind, and he's explaining that we need a new part. So we're gonna swap in a new slide top part of the gun, and hopefully that will make the action better to be able to eject the shell and reload a new one. So the semi-automatic weapon actually functions.
Interesting. So you just gotta make a return, and then all of a
He
sudden
can
your gun
level.
works
You
fine.
can tell, right?
Yeah, immediately works.
Looks like it's running nice and smooth.
That's much better. All right.
So that 20 or what it was a $200 pack of tool, like when I buy computer parts, right? You buy them in bulk, you get them all, and then when you screw it all together, you find out what works and what doesn't work. You typically can return that for refunds and stuff. So more than likely, you get your money back on that situation, and you didn't even do anything wrong yourself. So
Slide,
I even
swapped
take
in,
back what
so
I
I'm
just
getting my
said.
second.
He's missing like crazy. the dude behind him, he's like, fucking this guy. Wasting my goddamn time.
Everything you see here is 100%. They did it. There's no.
What is
and
that
what
shit,
you see
bro?
here is 100%.
This dude oh, I thought maybe it's just this dude's got like a fucking Yu-Gi-Oh fucking deck blade on his fucking. This dude's got a Yu-Gi-Oh deck blade, and he curved the fucking barrel like a psychopath. Unless you could just snap that, which you might.
And they won't blame me.
All right, Matt Rob.
I love anything.
The demographic that
goes
this caters
bang,
to
so,
is just
you know.
very telling to me.
New King Cobra. It's designed by Durwood and Mussey. It's still under development, but hope to be getting it out to everybody real soon.
This is Durwood, or at least that's his handle on the internet.
See, like, if there was someone that was a major figurehead that made these, made them safe, made them in a certain way, that you had to go through the same requirements to print them as you did weaponry, this would be fine, in my opinion. But again, the fact that that regulation doesn't exist is the problem. With the fucking skull and crossbones on it, it's crazy.
He makes the blueprints public for people to make or modify however they want. His work inspired something called the FGC-9, or Fuck Gun Control 9mm, which is turned up in Europe, where the laws on gun ownership are very strict.
Now you're
Right,
seeing these
yeah.
guns.
So that's the thing is, it's funny how the ghost guns are turning up in Europe, huh?
And that's fulfilling.
That's fulfilling. He goes, man, I'm so happy that people are able to 3D print this shit and shoot up people in in the UK.
Even in Europe, where it's used as this sort of like.
I'm not so happy with that because, hey, they got laws over there. Obey your local laws.
That's a CEO brain right there. But yeah, no, I mean, again, if there were laws around this, just like there are laws around this in the UK and overseas, you know, that's one thing. But there should be regulation around this here. That's really all it is. I'm gonna stop harping about it. I'll watch the video now.
And this
I
is
just feel like you
purely
can't
your
go without
own
saying with
interests
all of this, and
and
this guy's
enjoyment.
not saying
There's
it
no
enough.
deeper motivation than that.
Not really. I haven't ever made a dime off of it. I've invested thousands just in the hobby.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Soon, once regulation
Red
comes,
Senate.
man.
You want anybody to do anything illegal.
This man is like bred for the zombie apocalypse. He has like an underground bunker at his home with like 17 stacks of water, like 30 billion stacks of food, and like a whole secret armory section that he like presses a button and like a stone wall reaches to the ceiling. There's just a back stage gate of just like walls of shit. He is bred for this shit. He's born for this. I gotta see this dude. Is it curved? No, it's a straight barrel, but it's still like, bro, what are you playing, Saints Row?
The inventor of the first 3D printed gun. When Vice spoke to him in 2013, Wilson predicted a world where 3D printing technology would evolve to the point where it would be impossible for the government to stop.
Yeah.
Gun control for us is a fantasy, in a way that like people say, well, you're being unrealistic about printing a gun. I think it's more unrealistic now, especially going forward, to think you could ever control this technology.
Wilson makes money off a website that hosts...
Because this is the part that I'm interested in, because that's what I've been saying the whole video. See, this is why I like Vice. In some degree, they're at least structured around answering some questions. So, again, this is what I'm talking about. If there was some gating around this done by the government that restricts who can download what, I think that's reasonable. But the internet is such a vast place that it's going to be very hard to stop people from still being able to download it. Like, it is a little bit too late. It's interesting. I just weren't paying attention. They let this shit slip.
People say, well, you're being unrealistic about printing a gun. I think it's more unrealistic now, especially going forward, to think you could ever control this technology.
Law.
But again, the problem is when this technology becomes more accessible. 2013, nobody really had 3D printers. They were just coming out. Now, there's a core group of people who have 3D printers that do this, and what that'll look like in another 10 years, who knows?
2019, Wilson pled guilty to injuring a child for sexually assaulting a 16-year-old girl he met on the internet.
Jesus Christ, fuck this
He got
guy.
7 years probation and was required to register as a sex offender.
Yeah.
When you started out creating the 3D gun at the very beginning, did you, in your wildest dreams, think that it would come this far so fast?
Yeah, I literally thought this is how it should happen. This was what it would look like. It would be these types of people, these young men, quasi-alienated, but actually...
These white-ass dudes.
There's a kind of ironic engagement that the Zoomer, I think, influx added to it, which is perfect.
You talk about ironic. What about it's ironic to you?
The files, the activity will always be met with some level of police repression, either on the internet or in actuality. Like, maybe you won't be able to own a gun in this country in 10 years, or maybe you won't be able to build a gun in this country in 10 years. And these guys...
I don't think that... Maybe building a gun through this technology, but now he was just talking about how 10 years ago he was like, oh, maybe there won't be any regulation around this at all. I think it's impossible to stop it. His whole mentality changed.
And these guys are kind of already playing with that future in an ironic and distasteful way. They're vulgarizing it, you know, they're making it mobile, they're making it too flexible to be contained.
Yeah, they're chroming it out and dyeing it purple.
These guys are practicing something that is at once distasteful to the legacy gun manufacturers as much as it is to the activist wine mob.
Which good, though. Fuck the regular gun manufacturers. But my point is there needs to be some type of oversight on who can get this.
So it's a matter of taste.
I think that's more than fair.
Artistic principle.
Because there's already that oversight for our current guns, and it's already still a problem.
The government should invent a time machine and kill me 7 years ago. It's far too late now. The equipment, the 3D printing, it's so cheap. You can make anything. You can design anything.
I mean, again, you know, oh my God, with this group of fucking people, he's like, this is exactly what I envisioned. Of course it is. Fuck this guy. This guy sucks. But he is kind of right in the sense that, like, if they were gonna do what I'm saying, now it should still happen. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't happen, but that said, if it was going to happen, it should have happened in 2013, not in 2023.
Hamilton, third place.
Hey, that's pretty good. But it was with a homeboy's design, so that's probably why. It's not like he designed it. Damn. So it's not even on design. Well, I guess it is exclusively on design, but not like aesthetic.
Nearly 24,000 ghost guns at crime scenes in recent years. Guns aren't the only concern. Are We Cool Yet has designed 3D printed 37mm flare guns that are just a short step away from grenade launchers.
Jesus
the US military
Christ.
has been working on the real thing.
Right.
What's something that couldn't be made before at home that can now be made using a 3D printer as far as explosives go.
So
I was honestly, as a joke, like 30 seconds ago, I was about to be like, yeah, you could just 3D print a bomb. Like when the sex offender was like, hey yo, fucking it's too late, you can do anything. I was like, yeah, bro, just 3D print a grenade. But I think they're about to be like, yeah, you could 3D print a grenade.
Guns aren't the only concern.
You can 3D print a grenade
Arcolia
launcher
designed
for sure.
3D printed 30s.
where you would have an explosives
Wow.
charge inside that with some type of switch on there to initiate the explosive and dropped from a UAV, UAS typically.
Jeez, yeah,
onto our
true.
troops.
Or even just a
So
drone.
somebody attaches that to a drone,
Right.
flies it over, drops it, boom.
Correct.
And what's stopping someone from making that in the United States today?
Don't believe there's anything stopping somebody from making this in the United States.
Just recently, over the last week,
Brother, what are you? That's not good.
shooting competition for exclusively 3D printed and homemade firearms. And there was some really impressive designs on display from 100%,
The worry
almost
on this
every single
guy's
part.
face.
Impressive designs on display from
He's like, oh fuck.
100%, almost every single part of the gun was either home manufactured or printed, to kit guns on the other end of the spectrum.
Sure, sure. So when you talk about those guns and unique designs, right? Only limited by the imagination of the builder. Wow. I mean, some of the concern there is that some of those look like toys. You know, especially with the neon colors and
this one is
like, what's stopping a child from picking up the Hello Kitty toy looking gun that looks like a Nerf gun and finding out that it's a literal fucking ghost gun?
This one's 100%
exactly,
invented
brother.
design. There's no model that they're basing that off of.
wow.
What do you think about that?
That's wow. It's future, right?
Yeah.
It's the future,
There
right?
are several recent cases where ghost guns have turned up in the hands of white supremacists and
Oh,
extremists.
really?
in the
Have
US
they?
and in
Shout
Europe
out to New
too.
Jersey for that one.
The Biden administration wants to require serial numbers on some unfinished gun parts and restrict mail-order ghost gun kits. In a
I'm
victory for Cody
shocked
Wilson.
Biden wants to do like the bare minimum.
As long as they're used for their intended purposes by people that legally can have firearms, I don't have an issue with that. I don't think ATF has an issue with that. It's
Right.
when people use those firearms for criminal purposes that's
Precisely.
when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, and that's not to say everybody in this group of people are going to use it for criminal purposes, right? But the problem is they're making it, by making it a cool hobby, they're making it tremendously more likely that someone will use this technology for such. If they're telling me they're already finding 3D printed guns in the UK where it's illegal, if they're telling me they're like from a gun manufacturer in this circle, if they're telling me that they're already finding 24,000 ghost guns on, generally speaking, whatever crime scenes exist out there are being flooded with ghost guns, then I wouldn't be shocked if some of these guys' models start popping up there, you know, and then it becomes, hey, why did you design this? How did someone get this? You know, why does someone keep getting this?
Up here.
And it's too late for the regulation because people can still find a way to do it, but it's way easier to do it without the regulation. So you should still regulate it.
It's good at photos. Make sure I get this.
Contest is over. Now we need to do something about the ghost gun. I can't bring it home with me. It's gonna come back from whence it came, which is melted plastic. I mean, certainly we saw that it's not easy to print and make your own gun. We're still in a world where you need a lot
Skill.
of expertise, a lot of just time and labor to make this thing work, and then even then it doesn't work perfectly.
Right.
But the future, it's gonna get easier and easier
In
and
the next
easier
10
and
years,
lower
man.
the barrier of entry to getting a gun. And in your eyes, that's a good thing.
Absolutely, because here's the thing. Think of it this way. I know this is counterintuitive for a lot of people, but the more people who have guns, the more normal gun ownership is, the more responsible the community will be, and also the more educated the community will be in judging responsibility, right? But I think it's really important to acknowledge that, you know, I don't think everybody should have a gun. I think everybody who wants...
The more people have guns, the better the world will be, but not everybody should have a gun. You're closing your own argument. Honestly, this guy seems like a very likable, generally nice person. You know what I mean? He just seems to have a hobby, and I think he understands right from wrong. But again, it's about how easy it is for the wrong person to get access to the thing that you're doing.